Detroit, KMPS HD3 Seattle, WBMX HD3 Boston.
And on AOL Radio and Yahoo Launchcast. Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com.
Can loved ones who have translated communicate by numbers? Where are they? What does it mean for the families involved?
Well, hello there, and welcome to the 356th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Ben, and asking those unusual mathematical questions is my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad. So this evening, we're very pleased to welcome an old friend whose case my dad and I have been following for many years.
Dave Kane, a native and resident of Rhode Island, is a longtime radio talk show host, stand-up comedian, and performance artist. He is the author of 41 Signs of Hope, the moving story of his son, Nick O'Neill, youngest victim of the Station Nightclub fire in Rhode Island in 2003, in which 100 people were killed. The story of how Nick communicated, and still communicates, with his mom and dad, other relatives, friends, and even strangers through the number 41 makes for one of the most unusual cases in the annals of paranormal research, in our opinion. Along with the book, the movie 41 resulted from the case and is one of the best produced and most moving films I have ever seen. Anyway, according to his bio, quote, Dave has been in the field of radio for over 40 years, beginning in 1962. Pal, that's 50 years ago. I had no idea.
I try to make myself sound younger. You know how.
I had no idea you were so old. You're older.
I must be old, and I just realized you guys are on your 356th show. You said?
Yeah, I feel like I'm on my 356th a year.
This is the first time I've been invited. Thanks a lot. Oh, second time. Okay.
Second time. In other words, third. I was the first time on this CBS edition. Anyway,
excellent.
We're glad to have you. Anyway, you have Ben beaten by 2 years. He's considered the youngest syndicated radio host in America, and you started at the age of 14. He was 60 when he
started. Oh, yeah, well, because we didn't have internet then, remember?
That's true, yeah.
It was real radio where you have to crank it and everything.
Yeah, well, this is too. Yeah, I don't know if you have to crank it anymore. Sometimes I wonder about the studio. Anyway, on the air, Dave is known for his strong views, confrontational style, and sledgehammer wit. On stage, he is known as the pit bull of comedy.
Boy, who wrote that?
Had him on. Other than from hearing him on the air, Ben and I first got to know Dave about 2 years after the nightclub disaster, when he approached our family's media company, New River Press and Barking Cat Books, about publishing 41 Signs of Hope. We did publish the book's first edition and also became great friends with Dave and his wonderful wife, Joanne. It's been several years since Dave has been with us on the show, and it's his first time on the CBS New Sky edition. And Dave's website is www.41, the number 41, signsofhope.com. Don't miss that.
So Dave Kane, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal.
Hi, guys, and Ben, thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be on. Kidding aside, I appreciate it. I also want to take this opportunity right now to thank Paul, especially for choosing to publish 41 Signs of Hope. Of course, when I first started it, I couldn't get arrested. Nobody wanted to touch it. And nobody got it. And I don't know if you remember, Paul, but I called you. You asked me to send you a couple of chapters, and I did. And you immediately called back and agreed to publish the book. And if it were not for that, I wouldn't be on the show today because nobody wanted it.
Wow. Well, we all have our part to play, and it's a very important story to tell, I think, certainly.
What would you like me to tell you? Where would you like me to start?
All right, so Dave, many listeners may be unfamiliar with your case, so can you tell us about the terrible night in 2003 and how this all got started?
Well, yeah, the Station Nightclub fire, as you mentioned, was the fourth largest nightclub fire in the country's history. It was a little piddly nightclub, and there were 400 people plus at the club illegally. And there was soundproofing foam on the walls, also illegal. And there was a spark, the foam caught fire, and 100 people died, as you mentioned, and 200 seriously injured, and thousands of people devastated by this loss. Our son, Nicky, was the youngest victim. He was 18. And my story really starts right after the fire. We started to get what now we call signs, so that we didn't know what they were. At first you call them coincidences. or something happens and you go, oh, isn't that weird? And you kind of fluff it off. But as ours started to build more and more, I began to realize that these were not just happenstances, that there was something going on, that somebody was trying to let us know something that we didn't know about before, of course. The number 41 is important to this because I call it 41 Signs of Hope because, as you know, Nicky had a thing for the number 41. Before he passed, he'd get in the car with me and say, Dad, look, it's 241. Or he'd see a license plate, Dad, look, 4141. And none of us ever knew what this was about. Well, when Nicky passed, he was 18 and 23 days, 41. The Station Nightclub was at latitude 41.41. The fire call box at the station is 4414. And on the cover of the book, which you can see on my website, is a sketch of Nicky from a videotape we found a year after he passed. And in the sketch, you can see his mom is holding him, and he has a little baseball uniform on, and the number on the cap is 41. He was about 4 months old at the time. So that started it, and then we started to get sign upon sign upon sign, not all around 41. There were feathers and music and pennies and a lot of the same signs that other people get, but don't recognize them as signals from the other side.
Well, tell us about the phone call.
Yeah, the phone call is really interesting. As you mentioned, Paul, I've been in media all of my life, and when the fire happened and it got out that Nicky was in it, I started getting phone calls from every media outlet, everybody I had worked with over the years, and I was answering my cell phone, my wife's cell phone, and our house phone. The fire was on a Thursday, and we hadn't heard anything about Nicky at all. We couldn't find out anything about anything, and it was 4 days. And on Monday, after the fire, my wife's phone rang, and her cell phone, and it said Nicky. And of course, you go crazy. You think, oh my God, maybe he got out, maybe he had amnesia, maybe he was walking the street. I thought, could it be him? And I took the call, of course, immediately, and there was nobody there. And I called AT&T, our provider at the time, and explained the situation, and they traced the call for me. And the phone had been turned on at 10 minutes of 12 and shut off, and then turned on again at 10 minutes of 3 when I got the call. And I just figured that some rescue workers, some of them had found the phone and were playing with it to try to find out who it belonged to. That night, we got the call that they had Nicky's remains and et cetera. Well, 2 days later, when I went to the funeral home to get the remains, the only thing that they had of his was his cell phone. And the cell phone didn't work. I brought it to the cell phone company, and they told me that it had been completely shut off because of the water damage to it. Wow. So this wasn't a rescue worker. This was Nicky letting us know that our ordeal of waiting was over.
Wow.
And it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely incredible.
So you basically answered this question, but get a little more into detail. So why the number 41?
Yeah, well, why was he so interested in 41?
We don't know why that, and neither did he. His brother Chris, his oldest brother Chris, tried to help him. They did some numerology things, and it's a great number in numerology. The 5 is a great number, and 4 and 1 is 5, of course. And we still haven't been able to figure out why specifically Nicky was into it, except for the fact that he was a very spiritual young man, and he wrote he wrote a play a year before he died called They Walk Among Us. The play is about teenagers who die and come back as angels. And the only other thing that we could correlate to this is within Scripture. The number 40 in Scripture usually represents, I guess, just a lot of time, a long time. But if you read it, 40 days before Easter is Lent, on the 41st day is the resurrection, 40 days in the desert, and then on the 41st day he returns. Sure. 40 days after Jesus passes, he's seen resurrected.
It's a sacred number.
Yeah, and so it becomes, 41 becomes 40 days by the way of rain, and then Noah on the 41st day the dove is released. Right. I mean, all of these have a significance I don't know what relationship is to Nikki per se, but that was one of the things that we came to a couple of years after thinking about this.
Well, one of the things that I can't get over is how it started to affect me. I didn't know you before this occurred, and I unfortunately didn't know Nikki on the hoof, so to speak, for the two of us. And the number 41 began to manifest. Now, sure, you think of a certain number, naturally you're going to see it around, but this was beyond statistical probability. For example, I remember I called you as soon as the book was edited, and I know you were home with Joanne, and I said, "You're not going to believe this. The thing came out to 41 chapters."
Yes. Remember
and
that.
It was totally unplanned. It just, unless you deliberately set it up that way, but I can't imagine, but you didn't. And I just, it just kept happening and happening and happening. And I really felt that he, and I'm pretty good at this, and I really felt that he was kind of looking over my shoulder at the project, and such a benign and sweet-spirited person.
Well, that's interesting to say about looking over. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my Skype just flashed. I didn't know.
Oh.
Because when I was writing the book, one of the stories, I was writing about Chris and Nikki, and I wrote in the book that they were 8 years apart, and for some reason my computer kept my word processor kept underlining 8 years, and I thought, well, did I put a period? Well, maybe I'll write out years instead of YRS, and I couldn't get rid of this red line, and I couldn't figure it out. So I called Joanne over and I said, "What's the matter with this? What am I not doing right?" She said, "Oh, they're 10 years apart." And so Nikki was letting me know, no, Dad, it's not 8, it's 10 years.
Well, I mean, the intimacy is amazing, and we have a hard break coming up, but what was about the drawing you found on the sidewalk and you were interested in? Yeah,
how long have I got before the break?
You got about a minute and a half.
Okay.
Well, we can pick it up again when we come back.
And well, every morning, Joanne takes a walk every morning.
No, we got 1 minute. All right. Well, we better call.
All right. We'll start. We'll fill the time.
We'll pick that up when we come back. But
okay.
Anyway, we're talking with Dave Kane. It's Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on CBS New Sky Radio and newskyradio.com. We will be right back to continue our discussion of the number 41 and 41 Signs of Hope. Stay with us.
So what are you thankful for? The I'm Thankful Network explores the positive. Join host Sue Lundquist Tuesdays at noon Eastern Time. Empowering women, empowering lives. The I'm Thankful Network on New Sky Radio. Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, The Dr. Pat Show is alive with a distinctive blend of interviews with a mix of uplifting and intelligent news, educational and practical information. Get in the know. Following Dr. Pat, join host Laura Lee for Laura Lee's Spirit Salon. Contact your dearly departed, spirit guides, and angels to find answers, closure, guidance, insight, revelations, and prophecy regarding matters of the heart by contacting the other side through acclaimed medium Laura Lee. You are not alone. Batter up. Life's a game. Win. Call and get advice from today's top coaches that are here to help you win the game of life. The Coach Me Network is live starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Call in early. The lines are hot. 248-545-7685. Instant feedback at newskyradio.com. New Sky Radio. newskyradio.com. New horizons, no boundaries. Powered by CBS, Yahoo, and radio.com.
Kick up the leaves and the magic is lost. Tell me your blue skies fade to gray. Tell me your passion's gone away. And I don't need no carrying on. You stand in the line just to hit a new low. You're faking the smile with the coffee. Tell me your life's been way offline. You fall into pieces every time, and I don't don't need no caring home. So where was the passion when you needed the most? Oh, you and I, you kick up the leaves and the magic is lost. 'Cause you had a bad day, you take one down, you sing a sad song just to turn it around. You say you don't know, you tell me don't lie, you work at a smile and you go for a ride. You had a bad day, you see what you like, and how does it feel? One more time, you had a bad day, you had a bad day.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com. Believe.
And we're back with our guest, Dave Kane, author of 41 Signs of Hope. And we're talking about the amazing communications between his son and the family and even friends and strangers by means of the number 41, oddly enough. So, Dave, before the break, we were beginning to talk about the drawing that you and your wife, Joan, found on the sidewalk.
Well, what happened was I started to say my wife walks every morning, early in the morning, and when we had a house in Cranston, and
it's Cranston, Rhode Island. Yeah.
Cranston, Rhode Island, and Nikki loved that house, and because the boys had made a clubhouse in the attic, and it was one of those slanted rooms with the slanted ceilings, all painted white. And all of their friends went in and they painted on the walls and they did all kinds of graffiti and cartoons and tic-tac-toe, just everything. It was a real museum of memorabilia and stuff. And so when we left that house, Nikki was very upset and was upset to lose that place. One morning, after Nikki passed, Joanne was walking and she was talking to Nick as she does every day. And she said, Nick, one of these days we're going to try to get that house back. And when we do, I'm going to bring everybody back to put the cartoons back up and the drawings and the paintings and paste the stuff on. We're going to get everybody back, Nick. And then she said, of course, I realize I can't get everybody back. And when she said that, she looked down, and there right in front of her on a dew-filled morning was a piece of the art paper they used to use in school, that cheap stuff. And she picked it up and turned it over. And on it, it was completely dry. And on it, some young artist had drawn a man, a woman, a boy, and a dog. And on the bottom had signed it, Nicholas. Now, this was unbelievable. As a matter of fact, I called you about it, Paul, if you remember.
Yeah, you were interested in my theory about how that could happen.
I wanted to know. I mean, it's very possible, and of course, this is how spirit works too, doesn't it? It's possible that a young man named Nicholas could have gotten off the school bus and dropped that paper, and by serendipity, Joanne went by and at that moment found it. Mm-hmm. That's a way to do it. But you also talked to me about the possibility of it being placed there.
Yeah, I mean, it is entirely possible. We have talked about this for years. I don't know if we quite understand each other around it, but you get the basic idea of the parallel worlds thing.
Yeah.
And what I think happens when you we've taken to using the word translation rather than death, because that doesn't do it. Translation is an ancient theological term that was used by pagans and just about everybody, Christians, and to express the change of state from one life to another, right? And I don't believe in death. I've never seen any evidence of it whatsoever in 42 years of paranormal research. And what I have seen are people living parallel lives where they never died, and sometimes being very aware of where they were and of who their loved ones are, because the love goes way beyond one world. And their ability to be enlightened and to be aware of other worlds gives the appearance to us who are not so aware that they are manipulating space and time. And one of the ways to do this is to communicate by literally dropping in material objects from where they are to where we are, because it's an open system.
Now, is this the same thing, Paul, as when you can't find something in your house, you know you put it at place A, and you can't find it, and then you go back and it's exactly where you already looked?
I think that's exactly what it is.
Somebody has taken it to give you a hard time and then put it back just to...
Oh, no, I don't know if this is one of the things I'm always saying in paranormal research, is that just because something happens doesn't mean, quote, the ghost did it, unquote. I think that 90% of the time it's not necessarily intentional. It's created by the energies in the area. It's like when you run down the hallway, if you're in a hurry to answer the door and papers blow off the table because of the air you created, doesn't mean you knock the papers off the table. It means you just created the circumstances and the energies for that to happen. So it wasn't intentional. But there are things that do certainly seem to be intentional. I've had it happen to me. And this could have been one of the things that happened to you. Barring another explanation, such as you suggested, that some kid named Nicky, leaping off the school bus. But that's not the point. It's almost like talking about biblical studies. It's the point is it's not when, where, why. It's the message is the point.
Right. But my question is too. Let's go to if a kid named Nicky gets off the bus and drops it, isn't it possible that this is part of the scenario?
Sure.
For Joanne to come later, that it's all planned out.
That's chaos theory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not exactly chaos theory.
No. Well, close enough, I suppose.
Yeah, close enough, I would think.
It's not Jurassic Park, but...
Yeah, Ben, you got anything to say? What do you think's going on?
Well,
you were really little when this started.
Yeah, I remember going to one of the first book signings. It was at like a Cold Stone Creamery, I think. But anyway, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I remember what I was going to say now. Yeah, these things, they don't happen per chance. I mean, I don't really believe in luck because we make our own luck. But if it's interpreted in a sort of way, then it takes on that meaning. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm open to everything. You know me. I mean, I'm open to everything. But it's just as interesting to me that I'd like to know if that was, I mean, someday I will, I guess, if that was an intentional happening, or as Paul said, somebody was running down the hall, or does the other side know what's going to happen and then uses it for their own uses to send this message?
Well, it depends which other side. I mean, there are other sides, so to speak, where people are twice as ignorant and lost as they are here, and then there are others where you got people who are of the stature of Gandhi and Mother Teresa and all this. So I mean, that's the nature of quantum physics, at least interpreted this way. Everything is all possibilities exist somewhere or somewhen in this community of worlds, and it's that's what shamans do. They go out and they get the worlds that you need and bring the stuff back, and they make it one with our world, so that somebody maybe didn't have cancer there, they had it here, but they brought the worlds together, and the person doesn't have cancer anymore. That sort of thing is an everyday occurrence. And so that's essentially how it works. They can be manipulated, and they can be used. Yeah, and that's what is routine for people in the world where Nicky's consciousness seems to have come to rest, because he was a giant among souls, perhaps. I mean, I could just get that just from never mind the book, the movie did an amazing job of communicating what a sweet spirit and what a giant among souls he was or is.
He is, yeah. And we've had so many people who are in this tell us that he's one of the strongest spirits they've known, accomplishing things. As you know, Paul, we have that EVP of Nicky's voice.
Yeah, I wanted to get into some of that. Okay, yeah, we got 5 more minutes. I wanted to get into some of that, too, and the use of mediums and psychics, too. Now, a lot of people on the show get impressions that I don't necessarily mean, as I emphasize things, or Ben might emphasize something, that they think we might be against something completely, whereas we're really not. we've had occasionally mediums and psychics on the show. We don't have a lot because they all pretty much say the same thing. Doesn't mean it's not worth hearing, but, after a while, it's not much new to it. But that being said, there are a number of them, not very many, because I don't know all that many, really, strangely enough, whom I do trust and I do believe are actually experiencing these parallel worlds where they themselves know that they have lives and are sharing information, and I think it can be legitimate. The thing I stress is caution, to be very careful who you use, what you believe, and where the information is coming from. But once you have gotten through that, and you know in your heart that you're really talking to this loved one, or there's some communication, then there are steps beyond that where I think that acceptance is acceptable.
Well, we've had some tremendous experiences with mediums.
Yeah, let's tell us about some of that.
And Nikki, well, the biggest one, or one of the biggest ones, is when we went to see Robert Brown, who's an international medium from England. And my wife got his book, We Are Eternal. It was given to her by our son Chris. And it was the only thing that made her feel any good, any better, I should say, after the fire. It gave her some comfort. So she decided one night she was reading the book, put the book down to go to sleep, put her glasses on the book. Next time she woke up the next morning, looked down to make sure she didn't step on her glasses, and there on her glasses on the book was a big white feather. And she said, "That's it. I'm going to contact Robert Brown." So we wrote a letter to him, and his secretary gave us the first appointment he had in October of that year. And when we got there for an hour, he regaled us with things not only could he not know, but we didn't know until after we checked on some things that happened the night of the blaze. And at the end, Robert Brown pointed at me and said, "Your son wants me to tell you one more thing. He wants me to tell you that the show must go on." And what he couldn't possibly know, as you know, Paul, that those were the very last words Nikki spoke to me the day of the fire.
Yeah.
And it just absolutely validated for us that this was really Nikki, because nobody knew that but Joanne and I. No one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it just stunned us, and it was wonderful. It was in New York, and we went to the Stage Door Deli and ate like a couple of pigs for 3 hours. We celebrated. It was wonderful.
That's great. Well, I cannot imagine anything worse than losing a child. I had a conversation with someone this morning that was quite moving about this sort of thing. People come to us all the time and ask us, how do you handle this kind of thing when you lose a loved one? I mean, it's one thing to theorize about the multiverse and all this, and that they're alive in many other places. That's fine, but it doesn't alleviate the grief that we feel. Well, it shouldn't really. But when my mother passed, I don't know if you knew that my mother passed away last year.
Oh, no, I didn't know.
Yeah, I know you knew her, and she really liked you.
I liked her, too.
Yeah, and I'm sure she still does like you. Yeah. But people wrote to us from other places, okay, you got wise guy, how do you handle,
Paul, that's the first thing I said to myself. I had been on talk radio for so many years, and I knew the answers to everything, especially stuff I knew nothing about. And I remember standing in front of a mirror the day after Nikki passed, crying, screaming at myself in the mirror, saying, "Okay, wise guy, now what do you think? Yeah. Now what do you believe, big mouth? Now tell me." It was horrible. Mm-hmm. And were it not for his wonderful gifts that he's given us and other people and strangers and bringing other children in, etc., if it were not for that, I know I'd be visiting Joanne in a home someplace.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that brings us to our next break, and we'll be right back with Dave Kane and our discussion of 41 Signs of Hope and the nature of life, really. We'll be right back again. As I say, it's Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on CBS News Sky Radio and newskyradio.com. Stick with us.
Take CBS Radio The Sky with you wherever you go. Be sure to download the radio.com app today from your mobile marketplace. And when you really want to know more, be sure to visit newskyradio.com. Get in deep with exclusive articles and Sky News. Get your weekly horoscope and the inside scoop on host events. Radio.com and newskyradio.com. Stay connected.
She doesn't own a dress. Her
hair is always a mess. If you catch her stealing, she won't confess. She's beautiful, smokes a pack a day. You can wait, that's me, but anyway, she doesn't care a thing about that. Hey, she thinks I'm beautiful. Meet Virginia. She never compromises, loves babies and surprises, wears high heels when she exercises. Ain't that beautiful? Meet Virginia. Well, she wants to be the queen, and she thinks about her scene. Pulls her hair back as she screams. I don't really want to be the queen. Daddy wrestles alligators on carburetors. My brother is a fine mediator for the president. Here she is again on the phone, just like me, hates to be alone. We just like to sit at home and rip on the president. Meet Virginia. Well, she wants to live her life, and she thinks about her life. Pulls her hair back as she screams. I don't really want to live this life. Well, she wants to be the queen, and she thinks about her scenes. Well, she wants to live her life, and she thinks about her life. Pulls her hair back as she screams. I don't really want to be the queen. I don't really want to be the queen. I don't really want to be the queen.
Psychic Radio is now CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. New skyradio.com.
And we're back with Dave Kane, author of 41 Signs of Hope and the experiencer of one of the most unusual cases of communication we've ever dealt with when it comes to a loved one.
Okay, so we haven't talked in a very, very long time. Got to be over a year now. So what has happened since we last talked?
Well, a lot of things have happened. There have been a myriad of incidences. Nikki, I'll get calls or emails from people whose child has passed, and they'll tell me that they believe that my son has brought their son or their daughter to them. And it kind of got my attention because I thought, if I were hearing from my son, I don't know if I would say your son brought him. But obviously, Nikki, this has been Nikki's job to do, to help young people be able to communicate with their parents, and he's been doing a lot of that. And these other stories that we were talking about what happens first, whether it's how they plan it. I wanted to tell this story. Joanne, my wife Joanne, worried that Nikki suffered in the blaze, that he felt the flames. And for years, she would periodically have this concern that something happened, that he felt the pain. And every medium that we went to would say the same thing to us: no pain, no pain. Every single medium, no pain. Well, a couple of years ago, we were tagging a Christmas tree, and Nikki loved that. We're tagging a Christmas tree, and And Joanne was in that mode again. And being the kind, gentle, sweet husband that I am, Paul, I was screaming at her. And I was saying, when are you going to get it? This kid has told you. Every medium, Maureen Hancock, no pain. Lisa Powers, no pain. Roland Cantois, no pain. Robert Brown, no pain, no pain, no pain. We get in the car, she's driving, and we're going up Breakneck Hill Road in Lincoln. And I say to her, what do you want this kid? I said, you're driving him nuts. What do you want him to do? Put it in writing? And as soon as I said that, a car coming from the other direction, the vanity plate was no pain. And I found out who it was. It's an anesthesiologist that lives in Lincoln, Rhode Island.
Really?
And I called him and told him the story, and he gave me permission to use his picture in the book, the picture of the plate in the book.
Oh, that's priceless.
That is, I mean, think about that. I mean, what are the odds that could happen by serendipity?
It's really
amazing. It's got to be.
It's an anesthesiologist of all things.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be controlled on some level. Either we leave the park at that moment. You know, that's what is so interesting about it.
I'm going to tell you a very, very weird story from our point of view that in a way kind of matches up with this. Now, let me start by saying that I attended a funeral some years ago. And, you know me, I've spent 10 years in the seminary. I tend to be kind of a little bit academic, and I try to have more of an Eastern mentality or the Western mentality, but still you're influenced by your education. So I'm sitting there listening to it's a Catholic funeral, and I'm sitting there listening to a priest talking about how the dear departed was, you know, playing golf without greens, going back to the clubhouse and, you know, sucking up all the cakes and pastries you want without getting fat and all. And I said, well, that sounds great, but it doesn't sound very eschatological to me. Nothing like the beatific vision or anything. But then, you know, I was on the way home and I said, what the heck am I doing? If this multiverse thing is correct, then and all things being possible and, you know, and living in many worlds at the same time, then she probably is out playing golf and all this stuff. And I said, why not? And that came to mind when you told me about someone who suggested to you that Nikki was guiding others and teaching classes and doing all these things. And the weird story is this, that in the past 2 years, especially with the influence of my marvelous son here, who has shown me depths to this that I never knew were there.
Aw, thanks, Dan.
There have been experiences that, I mean, he operates in one circle in the multiverse, but I do too. I operate on another, and I finally acknowledged experiences that I had never acknowledged before that started 40 years ago when I was beginning in paranormal research, and that's the contact with other worlds and other species and other people. And, you know, finally I looked in the mirror and said, Paul, just accept it, you know. And in this world where another version of me seems to be operating, I call it the good world. And we came out on Coast to Coast AM on this in May of 2011, and I expected the whole country to laugh at us. But we got 3,800 emails saying, we know exactly what you were saying. Thank you for saying it. I've been there too. And everybody can't be crazy.
No.
So I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about when you talk about him operating from other in this good world, as I call it. People literally rise into the sky at night and access through the world by other worlds where they help other people. And it's not. I wouldn't know if I call it heaven. I mean, whatever that may mean. It's a very beautiful place, but it's not too different from here. And it just one is there in dreams, in meditation, and sometimes in waking life. I consider it my home. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. All that being said.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful, wonderful present too, isn't it?
It certainly is.
A wonderful gift that we are given. You know, we started to talk before the break about living through losing a child. And I have seen, you know, we have had this wonderful gift of this knowledge. And so we're trying to spread it out and tell other people about it and make sure other people benefit from it. But I've also watched parents who have lost people in this fire.
Yeah.
Who are so angry and so despondent and so lost. They are so, and they haven't opened themselves up, and they put themselves in what can, to me, be described as a hell of not knowing that not only are their loved ones okay, but you will be too.
That's right. That's what people want to know. Am I going to be okay?
Yeah.
Or my loved one's going to be okay?
And when I do my talk, I do a talk now, PowerPoint showing the stuff and Nikki's EVP, etc. And that's what I want people to know, because that's what I know now. I mean, I always thought I knew a little bit of it, but I knew nothing compared to what I've been trained to understand now. It's been a wonderful gift for me. And it sounds odd to say that, but that's exactly what it's been.
So that sort of brings up another question. How do people react to this when you tell these stories to them?
Well, at first, I went trying to, first of all, try to do this talk. People, they balk. I don't want you to come talk about how you lost your son. They think they're going to be crying all night, or they're going to be bored. And when I tell them that there are funny stories in this, because Nikki's funny, they start to warm up a little bit. Mostly they're afraid. I think that the big skeptics of this stuff, Ben, I think the skeptics, I call it the Santa syndrome. I think they're the ones that want it to be true the most.
That's true.
The skeptics. When I was a little boy, I was about 4 or 5 years old. My sister's 8 years older than I am. And I said to her one day, "But Maureen, is there really a Santa Claus?" And she said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "No." I went, "Oh, Maureen." And she said, No, there is. And that's what happens with skeptics. They want it to be true, but they don't want Lucy to move that football.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to get caught, believing something that isn't true.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think the skeptics too. Well, because the old saying, for the believer, no proof is necessary, and for the unbeliever, no proof is ever enough.
Right. So I just tell the story, and I show the picture of the no pain plate, and I play Nikki's EVP where he says, "Mom and Dad, this is Nick."
Yeah.
In his voice, clear as a bell.
I've heard hundreds or thousands of EVPs, and people play them for us all the time, but that is really unmistakable. I remember that one. And
it's even if you don't know Nicky. I mean, we know it's his voice. We have thousands of hours of videotape on Nick, but I mean, you can't listen to that and not know. We have a picture of Joanne and Nicky on Thanksgiving Day 2 years after he passed, where he's standing behind her in a hotel room.
I have a copy of that picture.
Yeah. I mean, now you can look at it and say, well, and if you want to do that, that's okay. I mean, I'm not here to convince anybody. The way I analogize it is, if I invite you to my house for a Christmas party, and you get there and I say, the buffet is in the kitchen. If you don't go into the kitchen and eat, that's not my fault. I've told you where it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you need to do for you. And you decide whether or not you like what you see. Oh, that's another story. But I'm just here to tell the truth of what we've experienced.
Well, that's true. And in the end, that's really all you can do. The motto of our show is everything you know is wrong, and because we don't really know anything. All we have is our experience. What God gives us, or whatever you feel is being given to you, I mean, that's all we have, and we have to go on that. And we have to stick together in it, and that from there, that's how we start to learn, in our opinion.
And you have to trust each other that what you're saying is not something you made up. I mean, just tell the truth and don't be afraid. That's another thing that stops people from talking about it, because they're afraid that somebody's going to not believe them, or think, especially older people, when they have visitations.
Very true.
They're afraid to talk about it because somebody's going to say, "Oh, the poor dear's going around the bend now."
Exactly. Well, speaking of around the bend, we have another break coming up. And we will be right back on Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on CBS New Sky Radio and newskyradio.com with our marvelous guest, Dave Kane, and 41 Signs of Hope. Stay with us.
Thursday is a power-packed day here on the Sky. Join us at noon for the I'm Thankful Network. At 1 p.m., it's the Dr. Pat Show. At 4 p.m., Colette Barron-Reed takes the stage for the Colette Barron-Reed Show. The Colette Barron-Reed Show, where intuition, practical spirituality, great advice, a little woo-woo fun, and fabulosity meet. Colette Barron-Reed is an internationally renowned intuitive counselor, educator, and best-selling author who helps others recognize and connect with their own intuition, potential, and purpose. Powerful motivational speaker, charismatic broadcast personality, and acclaimed performer, storyteller, and recording artist, Colette uses her extraordinary spiritual gifts to empower her clients to live a life that is awake and authentic, and to create a reality that is spiritual, deliberate, and meaningful. Call in early. The lines are hot. 248-545-7685. Instant feedback at newskyradio.com. New Sky Radio. newskyradio.com. New horizons, no boundaries. Powered by CBS, Yahoo, and radio.com.
CBS Radio's The Sky. Back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. Call now 248-545-SOUL. NewSkyRadio.com. Believe.
And we're back with our guest Dave Kane, author of 41 Signs of Hope and the experiencer of marvelous forms of communication by means of numbers with his son. Now, Dave, before this segment tends to fly by, so before it does, why don't you tell us about your book, the movie, what you're up to, your website, and how people can...
Okay, well, the book is called 41 Signs of Hope, and people can go to 41signsofhope.com, and if they're looking to get a book, and we'll set them up. Also, we have the movie, the award-winning, by the way, documentary, called 41, and you can see the trailer and buy the movie at 41themovie.com. That's 41themovie.com. And I'm doing speaking engagements now in New England called 41 Signs of Hope, where I talk a lot about the stuff that we've talked about today, and I have evidence and some amazing, quote, coincidences that you can judge for yourself.
Excellent. So what's this new electronic voice phenomenon that you were describing during the break? You hadn't known about it?
What happened was my wife went to see Lisa Powers, and she's in West Boylston, Holden now, Mass. Holden, Mass. Lisa Powers is a terrific medium. And my wife was listening to some of the old readings that she had, and she goes to Lisa's tape. And in the tape, she says, he's telling me you have 3 boys. And then she corrects it up and says, he's telling me you have 4 boys. And at that point on the tape, there's an EVP. And during the session, Lisa was talking about her own nephew who passed, and his number was 23. And Nikki, of course, chimes in about, with his 4 boys. And when we listen to the tape, right after that, there's a little boy's voice says, "Mommy," like that. Mm-hmm. And it shows up at 4123.
Of course.
So the two boys' numbers were there. Yeah. So obviously they were together.
Very interesting. Okay, well, what experiences did your other sons have regarding this phenomenon?
Well, they've all had all kinds of things. When Billy is an opera singer, when he was in college in San Francisco, he was picking out the college. He had a whole myriad of 41s happen to take him to this San Francisco Conservatory of Music, where he ended up studying. And all of when he went out to see it, everything around him was 41 this and 41 that. David has had amazing visits from him, especially in a series of readings that he's had recently. And David in the documentary is the one who's the skeptic. David is the one who says, I know all about that, but tell me who Nikki is. Don't tell me. But now David is on board. And Chris, the oldest boy, who's a stage director, he and Nikki, of course, were joined at the heart for years. They're 10 years apart, but they were best friends. And he gets all kinds of messages and ideas. And when we put Nikki's play together, when we did They Walk Among Us, Billy sang for the opening of the play, Chris directed the play, and David played the part that Nikki wrote for himself, Cyrus the Angel. Of course, Nikki wrote the lead for himself. And so David played that part, and we produced that as well. So we've had a lot of wonderful feelings, and we're all on board with this. Our whole family is really relishing it.
In your travels, now you mentioned one case of someone having a number, the number 23 in that case. Do you feel that all of us has a number?
I do. I don't know what significance they have to individuals, but I mean, everybody, when they call them lucky numbers, my lucky number. When they play the lottery, they always play a certain number, somebody's birth date. And I have found, because a lot of people, like you, Paul, people come up to me after I speak, and they all have stories about numbers coming up at a certain time and in a certain way, et cetera, et cetera. So I think they do, and I think it does have something to do with our individual being, that we are that, that number is more of a part of us than just to be a lucky number. I mean, one of the other stories we had, Joanne and I were talking about, we were driving on 95 in Rhode Island one night and talking about Chris's number, which is 711. He was born at 711 and he weighed 711. And we were talking about that. And about Nikki's number 41, and I went to take an exit, and a guy came up fast and came around me, and his license plate was 71141.
Oh my gosh!
So there's got to be something to this, in my estimation.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
I love your talk about what you call translation. Is that what you're calling it now?
Well, we do. Yeah, I've always kind of thought of it that way, and I thought it's far more. Remember, you and I used to talk about how our language is not up to actually discussing this, and we have no word that really is good enough to talk about this.
Yeah. Even mediums say, I have a client who lost their mother. In my talk, what I say is, we don't have the word we say lost. The comedian Bobcat Goldthwait, he used to say, I lost my job. He said, well, I didn't lose my job. I know where it is. It's just when I go there, somebody else is doing it.
Yes, right.
He said, and then later in his act, he says, I lost my girl. He said, I didn't lose my girl. I know where she is, but when I go there, somebody else, well, never mind.
Yeah, right. Okay. On that cheerful note, I'm afraid we're out of time.
Okay.
But, Dave, as always, it's a pleasure and a privilege to have you with us. And we'll talk off the air.
All right. Thanks a lot, Paul, and thanks to everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye then. Okay, Dave Kane, everybody, 41signsofhope.com.
So my dad and I will be speaking in Torrington, Connecticut on July 19th, Suffolk, England on September 22nd, and Warwick, Rhode Island on October 28th. So watch for more info on those events at www.behindtheparanormal.com.
And be sure to check out my books, several of them available on Barnes & Noble Nook, the e-reader, and Amazon Kindle. Faces the Window, Footsteps in the Attic, Turning Home God, Ghost, and Human Destiny, and for anybody in New England who's interested, Rhode Island, A Genial History.
So many thanks to our producer, Brandon Jackson, and we'll see you next week, July 1st, when my dad and I will do an open-line show to answer your questions and catch up on emails. The completely futile task indeed. So in the meantime, tune into our Boston Providence Drive Time show on WOON 1240 AM and ON Worldwide at 6 p.m. Eastern Time every Monday. You can always get free podcasts of all our shows, along with show schedules and guest information at www.behindtheparanormal.com.
And we'll leave you this evening with a thought from the 20th century American physicist and philosopher Richard Feynman. I think it's much more interesting to live not knowing than to have answers which might be wrong. Unquote.
So thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we'll see you next time.